place to change lives. So, if you've never been here, or even if you haven't been here in a while, what does Camp CoBeAc have to offer you? Well, come and see. With so many campers each week, team competitions are exciting, challenging, and a ton of fun. Team enthusiasm is electric as cheering erupts before and after competitions. You'll never be bored at free time with the countless activities available. If you like the water, then the lakefront with its blob, water slide, boats, and a whole lot more will be a great place to hang out. Though there is certainly enough to do at Camp CoBeAc to keep a camper busy, the main objective is to create an environment through preaching where campers can believe on Christ. Each week, campers will hear several Bible messages, spend time studying God's Word in God and I time, and have a daily challenge from their counselor. Chapel services provide an exciting environment through powerful congregational singing, Christ-honoring specials, and dynamic preaching. Preachers from all over the country speak multiple times, allowing them to establish a rapport over the course of the week. Each night, an invitation is given where young people are given the opportunity to speak with a counselor about their decision and fill out a decision slip that will be sent home with the sponsor. Of course, all this exists because we want each camper to accept God's call and plan for their life. Many of them respond to the preaching and allow God entrance into their hearts.
This week at camp,
I decided to rededicate my life to God.
I surrendered to the ministry.
I decided to remain faithful in my devotions.
I surrendered to God. This week at camp, I decided to stay faithful to God. I decided to improve my attitude.
I decided to stay pure.
I decided to give my life to God.
This week at camp, I decided to stay pure until marriage.
I decided to stay faithful to God.
This week at camp, I decided to read my Bible and pray more.
I decided to stay pure.
This week at camp, I decided to be a preacher.
This week at camp, I decided to stay pure.
This week at camp, I decided to become a preacher.
I decided to let God change my ways in my heart.
I decided to get saved.
I decided to follow Christ, to give my life to God.
This week at camp,
Camp CoBeAc provides a beautiful, safe, Christ-honoring environment where the Word of God is the final authority and where campers are challenged to live their lives according to it. So, to fully understand Camp CoBeAc, you must come, believe, and accept.
Well, good evening. It's good to see you all here tonight. Thank you so much for allowing us to come and say a word about the ministry of Camp CoBeAc. It's hard to believe that my wife and I have been there for 10 years now. This is our 28th year in camping ministry. We started a long time ago. In fact, this is my 1,085th church that I've been in, besides my home church, where my pastor probably would like to see me. And we travel quite a bit. We're in quite a few churches throughout the course of the year. I'm going to guess we're at our home church just a handful of times. We're gone Wednesdays and Sundays and special meetings, just letting folks know about the ministry. We had a church this last week at the camp who just found out they just found out that Camp CoBeAc was not liberal. They had believed for the last 15 years that Camp CoBeAc was liberal. I did not ask for a clarification of it. They just said they loved it. And they were, hey, listen, we were conservative, and they loved what they saw. I get that more than you'll ever know. And we just are nice through all that process. Just let them know where we're going, who we are, what we've been doing. Camp CoBeAc has essentially stayed the same since 1959. It's the same doctrinal statement. It's the same standards. It's the same Bible. It's the same music. You know, we have all types of personalities coming through there. If you would only know of all the folks that try to get you to move from one point to the next. And we just stay steady. We're very aware of what needs to be done there at the camp ministry. It's a delicate balance for those of you that have to deal with others on a regular basis. It's a delicate balance to keep everyone happy and to massage good, positive thoughts into their minds and to reassure them and give them that confidence. And one of the reasons that I find it profitable to go to churches, even those that have been supporting the camp since 1960, is to just let them know that everything is wonderful and everything is well. We're seeing great decisions at the camp while our numbers have increased drastically, which help us to be able to do much more and to address a number of things. We're still seeing decisions made at the camp. While we're excited about the growth of our ministry, that's kind of normal for one of those folks that get in there that's a driver. We're a builder. We like to see things grow. Tom Farrell, an evangelist friend of mine for years, said that wherever you're at, wherever you're attending church, wherever you're directing camp, wherever you're serving as an employee, you ought to believe apart from heaven, everyone should come through your doors. You just believe that. And I believe that. I feel sorry for those who drive past exit 227 on their way somewhere else or through. Listen, I'm sure they're getting some good things, but I know what we're doing there. And we work hard as a staff to provide the best possible program that we could possibly provide, given all the variables that could come up. I told our staff, in fact, I challenged our staff. We have about 85 summer staff, and about almost 15 full-time and part-time employees, so about 100 people. I said there's about 100 variables here on any given day, because you have 100 different people moving through life at the same location, and we're all assuming everyone's doing exactly what they're supposed to do. It's the human variable. You cannot always manage that perfectly, and yet, I think the confidences of the churches from Indiana, Ohio, and here in Michigan, primarily, these are the states that support the camp. Boy, I tell you, it's an all-time high, and I'm so thankful for it. I was telling preacher just before I got into the door, there was a preacher from Indiana that started to come to CoBeAc this summer, and they have 42 young people coming, and they have made CoBeAc their camp. This next week, we have another church. They'll bring 70 kids to camp. They just chose Camp CoBeAc for the next 10 years to come, and they made a commitment. There's a new church this next week. They're bringing 26 young people to camp. 8 of those young people are junior campers. They've never been to camp before. And hey, listen, there's a confidence in the ministry of the camp. There's an unusual number of churches from Indiana. Everyone in Michigan knows who we are, you would think, but there are some exceptions. Camp Lake Baptist Church. Maybe you've ever heard of Camp Lake Baptist Church. Camp Lake Baptist Church is a church of 300 over a little north of Grand Rapids in Camp Lake, Michigan. And they've been going to another camp in our state, and they felt like that camp was moving the emphasis to a contemporary music style, and they didn't like that. They tried to endure it. They tried to adjust to it. They did their best to enjoy it, and they finally decided they could no longer take that and said, this is what we want our young people to participate in. So last summer, someone had recommended, hey, listen, why don't you take a look at Camp CoBeAc? This pastor's been in the state for 25 years, and not one person has ever told him about Camp CoBeAc before. And he came over to visit, and he was there for 1 hour and said, this is our new camp, without even seeing anything else. And we went to his church this last year. They're going to join our fellowship of churches. They're just like any of our churches that are friends for years. And yet there are some churches in Michigan. They just don't know who we are. There's a church in Canton, Michigan. They run 2,200 people in their church. This summer they chose Camp CoBeAc as their camp. So we're getting churches to consider coming to our place, but there's no more fertile ground than Indiana. Indiana, when I first came 10 years ago, we had 3 churches. This summer, we have 62 churches coming from Indiana. Listen, that's a battleground state for us, and we love getting over there, and they're excited about what's going on. Another state opening up a little east of Indiana called Ohio. I know there's some folks in here that may not like Ohio just because of the sports, and maybe because they didn't vote right in the last election, there's a lot of reasons not to like Ohio. But there's some good reasons to like Ohio, because there are some independent fundamental Baptist brethren there, and they're looking for a good camp to go to, and it's starting to open up. If I get a new church in Wisconsin, I'll get about 10 new campers. It's hard to get churches from Wisconsin. There's 5 million people. There's 4 camps there. There's a big body of water that prevents people from having a lot of motivation to come over here. And so I have not been to Wisconsin in 10 years promoting the camp. If they come, it's wonderful, but it's really a small number of people per church that would come as far as campers are concerned. Illinois, I would get about 15 to 20 young people from a youth group coming to the camp. And Illinois is actually opening up as well. We're excited about those churches. Indiana, I'm going to get about 25 young people in a youth group that are going to come to the camp. What I'm excited about in Ohio is that the number is about 50 in a youth group. The churches there are huge. They're quite large, and they're excited about youth ministry. And so, you know, we have a lot of room to grow yet, and we're still getting the word out. We've organized the camp ministry to adjust to all those things that we're trying to accomplish on an everyday basis. Most folks don't realize this, but I look at the ministry every day, and I evaluate all the needs that are there. Some people are more gifted in their spots. Some people would do better if you just moved them, but we know, and you and I both know, some people get offended when you move them out of positions too quickly. Perhaps someone's doing, they would do a better job on the bus route than a junior church worker. Perhaps they would do better serving, in the sound room than they would as some type of teacher. And so you just have to figure out what the gifts and abilities are. And this last year, about January, I switched up about 80% of our staff's positions. I went away for about a week, and I rewrote every job description. And I finally tried to put people in those positions that I felt would best fit. And I'll tell you, even the pastors that are coming to visit our camp are saying, boy, things are running so much more smoothly, and they're so excited about the things and advances that we've made there in the ministry. We're finishing up a miniature golf course. It's going to be a nice one. We really wanted to put one in. I put one in the last ministry that we were involved with. It was well received there. We believe that this would be a great addition to our camp, and so that's finishing up in the next couple of weeks, and we're glad for the efforts of those that are doing that. Every year we've tried to put in some new activities, and since we've come, we put in a climbing wall and a couple of zip wires, and we've added a number of things in the lake. And I didn't add anything at the lakefront since I've been there. There's only 4 or 5 boats when I got there. We had to kind of divert all the funds to get some things taken care of in the buildings. We had a speaker that was speaking for us a couple of years ago. In fact, my first fall, and she called me in the middle of the night and told me that her wall in her cabin fell down. And I said, well, you mean like just a little section? No. I can see the complete outside. The entire wall from one end of the wall to the other just fell right out of the thing. And so there was a lot of things that had to be repaired and taken care of, and monies had to be diverted towards those things. A great example is our refrigerator. Those of you that have been there before, our refrigerator's been there since the opening of the kitchen. And every couple of months we have to put in about $500 of repairs. Well, we really felt like it was prudent for us not to push that too much longer. And so we went ahead and decided to get a freezer and a refrigerator unit, and we got that thing, and the Lord provided it. There's some extra things that's required to get that thing hooked up. I hooked it up by faith. We'll trust that the Lord will bring some resources in, and then lo and behold, our well broke, and we have to put $10,000 in there, and so we went ahead and did that too. And those are things that just come. There's $20,000 that just comes out of your budget in a week. And hey, listen, the repairs are necessary. You can't do without water, and you can't do without refrigeration. You have to make those things work. And so, but when we're dealing with things at Camp CoBeAc, because we're dealing with so many people, everything that we purchase is a large thing. And we have 350 campers this week. We have 100 staff. That's 450 people. In addition, we have 35 sponsors. We almost have 500 people at CoBeAc. Listen, there's some wear and tear. There's some things that have to be addressed. And by God's grace, we'll continue improving all of these efforts. One of the reasons I put in miniature golf course was I really want to have an evangelistic outreach to our community. And so, I've been talking to some folks, and we are trying to get 6,000 guests every Saturday throughout the summer months to play mini golf and go on our zip line, and they get to come to the gospel tent. They get to hear some good conservative music. We run specials to get kids registered. Last year we had 30 young people from our community come to camp, and they all got saved. They all trusted Christ. Hey, listen, we're just trying to get them involved, and yet we're the only camp in the nation, in our circle, that has a tourism town as big as the one we have. and they can come in, they can help us with some of these things. Next year, we're going to try to put in an 80-foot swing, and the next year, we want to put in an 8-station zip line. Hey, listen, these things just take time. And yet, we always have an agenda to push these things forward, and we're gaining some new friends to make that possible along the way. And so, praise the Lord for the camp. The summer camp is doing well. We have a lot of things going on throughout the summer, including our family camps. Let me encourage you to consider those. There's some brochures in the back. I have a fella coming, the same fellow that did our video for summer is doing one for family camp. And that will be done at the end of the summer. We'll send that all over. We're improving our family camp ministry as well. And then, of course, throughout the whole year, it's a year-round ministry. I've tried to limit the number of days. There were no one there. We've tried to encourage folks to come. We won't rent the facility to any other group that is certainly going to be opposite our doctrinal statement, but there are a couple of neutral groups that we try to be a blessing to. The quilt guilds, we have 3 or 4 quilt guilds that come, and as long as they're willing to have a prayer, a song service, and a devotional every day on the gospel, we let them come. All they do is quilt and eat. They can't have any alcohol. There's none of their music play. They love what we're doing. And in fact, 15 of the grandparents that were there sending kids to camp, those kids have already received Christ. And so, hey, listen, I'm thankful for those, but we're trying to build that group and that ministry up as far as the rentals are concerned. But let me mention one, the Women Counseling Women Conference. If you haven't gone to this, it's a great program to be involved with. Debbie Pride is, I think, one of the most gifted lady counselors in the country. She knows a ton of Bible. She certainly knows more Bible than I do by heart. And she has dedicated herself to this, and she's been such a help to women. And, we encourage folks to come and participate. She's a wonderfully skillful, compassionate woman who gives you her personal phone number, and you can call her long after you leave that program and ask her for help to help anyone else that you would like to direct your concerns toward. And she's always there to be a blessing. But anyways, we took that from Pastor Juan Marino, had that ministry for 7 years. He came up with his wife and said, listen, we really, it's getting too big. We'd like to know if CoBeAc would like it. And we took it a number of years ago, and it's been doing well since then as well. But anyways, we have a lot of programs throughout the year. Hope you'll come. You know us. We're only an hour away. Some of you know CoBeAc better than I know CoBeAc, even though I've been there 10 years full time. But we do appreciate that. In addition, we started the Walk Right Baptist Bible Institute. People ask me all the time, what are we trying to accomplish there? Well, we're not a 4-year Bible college. We're not trying to be something. I try to let Doug Jackson know, who's also the chairman of the Maranatha, that I'm not going after the Maranatha. I'm not trying to compete with Bob Jones University. We're certainly not interested in that. But I was reading the scriptures a number of years ago, and in Acts chapter 11, Barnabas was sent over to Antioch to see some believers that had come to know the Lord. And he was excited for these people, had a message for them. And then Barnabas, knowing what they needed, said, I got to go and find Paul. And when he had found him, he brought him to Antioch, and it came to pass that a whole year they assembled themselves with the church and taught much people, and the disciples were called Christians first in Antioch. What an important date in church history. This group of Gentile Christians got word that Jesus saves. He's rich unto all that call upon him, not only to the Jew, but to the Gentile alike. And Paul came with Barnabas and discipled these people and gave them the great truths of Scripture. And these folks were called disciples because they sat under the teaching of these good men, and they did it so well that they were now more than just disciples, they were Christians. And these folks excelled in exemplifying the life of Christ. What a blessing that is. And all we try to do at Walk Right is to provide a place for young people to come and get a biblical foundation for their life. I don't have it as a slogan, but it certainly could be a slogan. It pays to walk right. We have the smartest people in the world in Washington, D.C., and look at it. They're filled with deception and manipulation. You can't get a guy to tell the truth. They're always elbowing their way for advantage, and they cover each other's back. Listen, the smartest people in the world are worthless without character and a backbone. Give me a man with backbone, with no knowledge, and that person will get knowledge, and they'll become a useful part. But we need not just any type of knowledge. We need biblical knowledge. We need wisdom. And we give these folks that. We bring in 20 of the best speakers in the country. We looked at our program, and over a 5-year period before we started it, we wanted to, decide what are the 20 top classes that a student would take if he went to Bible school for 1 year. Do you realize that only 2 out of 10 young people are going to Bible college today? Only 2 out of 10. It used to be 6 out of 10 20 years ago. That's a study that Maranatha and Bob Jones released. Only 2 out of 10, for a lot of different reasons. Regardless, I'm not going to discuss those, but where are those 8 going? They're staying at home. They're going into the military. They're going to a community college. Maybe they're going away to a secular school, staying in one of their dormitory situations. Some are just living in their parents' basement until they're 25, breaking all the Wii records. Whatever it is, I don't know, but 8 out of 10 of our young people from our Bible college, from our good conservative fundamental churches, are choosing not to go to Bible college. 2 that are going, only 1 of them graduates. The other one most likely leaves after their freshman year. And if you go to a school that I was an advisor to, I would tell you as an advisor that you should just stay on course. Don't change too many classes, because if you do, you'll end up going 5 years. If you don't want to go to college at all, you're going to end up going a lot more if you try to be creative. And so we get them into some type of program. And so what do they get? Half of the young people that go to Bible college, they're leaving. They're getting classes that really no one cares about. English and speech. Now, I know some people over here are saying, well, those are important, Brother Call. Yes, indeed. But if you're going to Bible college for 1 year, I don't know if those are the only classes I would be interested in. Listen, sometimes you just got to grab the heart of young people, and by bringing these preachers in from the front line, on the front line. Listen, we've had Ron Comfort come and speak, and we've had Jim Berg come and speak, and Rick Arrowwood come and speak, and John Vaughn come and speak. I had Dr. Bob III come and do a 2-day session. I've had all of our speakers that are there speaking come and address them on some capacity. Last year, our student body had 126 different preachers speaking to them. Listen, you go look at some of those students, they're living for God. You look at some of those students, they're on fire for the things of God. Listen, to me, that's invaluable. And so we also give them some skill sets. And, of course, there's a lot of creativity to go. We just developed a 3-year program. You say, well, Brother Call, what happened there? Well, I just kept reading the Bible. Paul brought the elders of the church in Ephesus. Therefore, watch and remember that by the space of 3 years, I cease not to warn you every night and day with tears. Listen, it was a blessing to be involved that 1 year, and there's some young people that just want to keep on staying around, and we want to be a help, and so we're getting our kids involved with all types of programs. We had one student that graduated this year. That student, after 2 years, was brought in next to 5 other preacher boys from 2 other schools, from Bible schools, and that pastor called me and said, I'm not sure what you're doing with those young people, but we're going to hire that boy to be our youth pastor, because he had all the answers. He knew, he was confident, he had a servant spirit, he had a love for God. Hey, these other kids were good kids, but we chose this one. It speaks well of your institute. And he was really pleased. And you say, well, Brother Call, that's an exception. No, we actually have that happen regularly in the last 3 years. And so praise the Lord for these things. We're expecting a good increase this year, and we're excited about those things. We actually have more people from outside the state of Michigan coming than Michigan. In fact, we have 60% of our campers that come from outside of Michigan. And so for both ministries, we are dependent on a lot of churches and ministries outside of our state. And when I came 10 years ago and I sat there with the board of directors, I said, fellas, I'm willing to come as long as you're willing to be aggressive. I've taught camp classes in the undergraduate and graduate level for 15 years. And I've seen little church camps fail because people weren't committed to those things. And we're going to have to get more people involved because the mindset of camp is so much different today than it was 25 and 30 and 40 years ago. People measure the ministry so much more differently than they do years ago. And there's some folks that, bless their heart, they'll come and talk about the precious days when they walked over to the bathhouse, the central bathhouse, and they'll talk about those days. Well, listen, you do that now, people aren't coming to camp. They're not. There's a whole lot of camps with bathrooms in their cabin that they'd rather send them to. And so, those are things that have to be addressed in every ministry, and we just try to do that. I know it sounds like I'm preaching. I wasn't preaching. I was just giving you kind of a testimony of what's going on there at the camp. We take our kids to New York City. They have to defend their faith and their standards 9 months into the program. They come into a room after several months of working hard, and they have to answer 25 of the issues that are common conflicts in churches today. Hey, listen, tell me the last time you got up and turned off the television because the program that you're watching had a worldly mindset, it promoted a style that just wasn't helpful to your spirit. How many cuss words can you listen to before your spirit is just kind of antsy? Tell me the heroes in your life and why you chose those people. Tell me what kind of music you listen to and how you came to that decision using the Bible. What I'm finding with our young people after these last 3 years is that the majority of our young people, even though they're coming from good conservative ministries, are listening to things their parents never thought they were listening to, watching more than their parents thought they were watching, know a lot less than you would think they'd know after being involved in church all their lives. There's a young person that came this year. They're the son of a Baptist preacher, good Baptist preacher. Didn't even know what the Baptist distinctives were, had no clue. That same Baptist preacher told me 2 years ago that the majority of his people, he'd say 70% of them would feel completely comfortable in a new evangelical church. And so listen, there's a lot of, I've mentioned that statistic to a lot of pastors, and a lot of pastors say, yeah, that's probably true. A lot of folks want to take the path of least resistance. They want the smoothest road. And so our young people are catching that spirit, and they need to shore this up, because that's why they're choosing the things of this world. That's why we're losing some of them like we are. But listen, there'll be plenty of time for you to ask me questions after the service. I hope you will. I hope you come up and visit. We're excited about what the Lord's doing there. I told our staff that camp is it's a battlefield, cleverly disguised as a playground. You listen, while we're trying to do all we can there in the ministry, the real reason we exist has nothing to do with recreation. The real reason that we exist has nothing to do with a balanced diet. The real reason we exist at Camp CoBeAc is to wrestle for the souls of young people and the hearts of young people and the minds of young people, and to give them a choice. I was at a youth conference just a couple of weeks ago, and the theme of the youth conference in Pittsburgh was Cast Your Votes. And they gave me a couple of T-shirts with Cast Your Vote. And I challenged the young people that the political season being upon us, many of our folks will go to the voting booth this fall, and they'll pick up their piece of paper, and they'll have a number 2 pencil, and they'll go into some little small space, and perhaps they'll close the curtain behind them, and they'll have several circles to fill in with their pencil. I said, it's not so, obvious, I suppose, in the Christian faith as it is on that first Tuesday in November when you're doing elections. For us, it's a decision every day. You're filling that, am I going to be positive today, or I'm going to be negative? I'm going to follow Christ. I'm not going to follow Christ. I'm going to be joyful. I'm not going to be joyful. You know, I'm going to feed my flesh. I'm not going to feed my flesh. I'm going to react. I'm going to respond. I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to do the wrong thing. Listen, every day and every moment, we have a chance to cast our vote for the things of God. And every decision brings us to that point. You know, temptations are in our lives, and each time this intersection happens, for some of us, multiple times in a day, certainly multiple times in a week where we're tempted to do wrong. It's an intersection for us to declare our loyalty to Jesus Christ and to the Word of God, or to declare our loyalty to ourselves and to the things of this world, and certainly to the former things of our father, Satan himself. It's a chance for us to do that. And so anyways, let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 16. Let me just be